Welcome, everybody. Today we are talking about divisible rooms. My name is Matt Van Gastel. I'm the Technical Solutions Manager here at Nureva, and I'm really looking forward to having this discussion today. And without further ado, I say we get into it. So, divisible rooms. Three things that we're going to focus on today. First, we're going to dig on and explore the basics to advanced divisible rooms. I've got a bunch of different examples we're going to go through. We're going to discuss layout, some different switching hardware that you use to make this happen, and I'm going to touch on cameras towards the end. And the last thing we're going to be looking at today is we're going to step outside the specifications. I have some customers sometimes who want to do some really interesting things with divisible rooms, and I want to talk through that a little bit. Now, if you're not familiar, I will highlight this right off the top. If you go to support.nureva.com and simply search divisible, you're going to find the very first result is going to be our Setting Up Divisible Rooms guide. This is a fantastic guide. A large amount of the content that I'm talking about today is specifically contained in this guide, along with a lot more detailed information that I'm able to go through. So I strongly encourage you, if you're not familiar already, to go and take a look at this guide, as it will provide you a wealth of fantastic information. But as always, if you do need help, maybe any support, reach out to the team here, support@nureva.com. We'll recap that at the end. So, of course, how to divide a space, that's what we're here to talk about today, and let's jump right in. So, first off, well, let's give a definition. A divisible space is a room large space that can be divided into two or more smaller rooms. Typically, it has a movable partition, walls that are extended to divide the space and retracted to open it up. Just a quick note on those partition walls. They should be as acoustically opaque as possible. You do not want sound transmitting from one space to the other when those rooms are divided. Now, when we talk about rooms, well, let's talk about room size. If you're not familiar with the HDL 310, it covers a space of about 30 by 30 feet. Conversely, the 410, the dual bar system, will reach up to about 55 by 35 feet. Now, sometimes we can step a bit beyond that. I'm going to explore that a little bit later, as I had alluded to at the beginning, but we're not going to touch on that right yet. However, just take away that these are generally the two room sizes that we're working with in terms of maximum dimensions. And how do we make this happen? Well, quite simple. The basic divisible room setup is two HDL 310 systems, as we see here, and they are controlled using a simple switch. There's a more complex divisible room, and well, this is actually quite complex, and there are several different layouts and room combinations possible with this type of setup. And we're going to explore both of these as well as a few more next. And like I said, as we get into these example spaces, the very first one that I want to talk about is something like this. This is, say, a standard office layout. We've got two training rooms here in the top left corner, and there's a partition wall that divides the two of them. On occasion, the customer would like to combine these spaces to create one large meeting room. They do not plan on changing the layout of the room at all, which really leads to a very simple decision: where to put the bars. In this example, I've decided to go with the two bars at the front of the room. I'm maintaining a good, healthy space between them, so each room is providing a fair amount of coverage and completing audio throughout the space. So this is the most basic type of divisible space. Like I said, you've got two rooms similar in size to each other, side by side. And the approach uses a single AV switch. And let's kick back to that drawing. So as I mentioned, we use two HDL 310 systems and a layer 1 Ethernet AV switch. You may be thinking, hey, I've got a switch back at the shop there. I could probably go ahead and use that. Not quite the case. These are specific switches, of which I'm going to detail here shortly. Now, these are both connected to individual connect modules, but what you'll notice is that layer 1 Ethernet AV switch will allow us to take and combine two bars to one connect module by going to that B switch side, and that's effectively doing just that. So I've now taken the two HDL 310 systems and combined them into a 410 system. And as we note back to that original drawing that I was showing you a few slides ago, this allows us to cover a much larger spot with that two-bar system. The next example, we've got a customer who has a training room, but the training room isn't very big, and occasionally they like to hold things like town halls. So what they've proposed is to head up a pardon me, to set up a room just like this. Both of these mini rooms can be combined into one space, but they can also open up that lunchroom to allow for additional space. However, this creates a bit of a odd shaped space. And you've also noticed that we've taken and combined three rooms into one space. What's interesting about this, however, is it doesn't really change from the fact that this is still just a two-way divisible system. Because what's going to happen when I combine this space is I'm going to take the bar that's on the west wall here and the bar that's on the south wall, and those are going to get combined together. You notice my full room dimensions are still 45 by 35, so I'm well within that allowable limit that we like to specify, but I'm going to still provide great coverage throughout that space for both microphone and speakers. So the takeaway here is even though we're using three bars effectively across three rooms, we're still only using two of them. So again, this is just a basic two-way divisible room. The next example, things are going to get a little bit more complex. Customers come to us and they say, hey, Matt, we've got these three rooms that we'd like to combine together, and we'd like to do it in a couple of different ways. Absolutely, I say we can certainly accommodate that for you. This room starts to increase complexity as the use case requires the ability to combine both the A plus B, B plus C, and the entire space into a single room. This simply requires the addition of two AB switches to facilitate full control. As you can see here in this diagram, we've got that set up, and effectively this allows us to do just that. I can combine the A plus B, the B plus C, or all three spaces together. To add more to it, though, we give you this guide and indications on what you need to set up specifically to accomplish these different setups. It's very straightforward once you've got this information. And again, it's just a matter of determining how you'd like it to switch. So again, when we go back to this space, I can combine the A plus B, the B plus C, but also let's take a look at the playout. Pardon me, the layout. When I've got the A and B combined, I've got this XY axis set up. Same with the C and the B. However, when I combine the A and the C, because I've got enough distance between the two bars and I put them on either side of the space, again, I'm going to get great coverage across the entire space. That unified coverage map, all of those microphones working together to provide that fantastic audio experience. Now, the last example that I'm going to cover here, this is where things really get interesting. This overall space is 55 by 36 feet, just a hair outside those specifications, but should be just fine. And what the customer wants to do is something akin to this. This is the most complex design that we have, and that is a visible space design guide. There are certainly other use cases, and we encourage you to reach out to us if you'd like to do something outside of what we have documented. Now, this design allows specifically for configuring the full space into multiple side-by-side combined spaces, as well as having the full room combined into one large space overall. And placement here requires careful thought. So I'm going to jump ahead here and show you what the wiring guide looks like for this. Very similar to what we saw with the three-way divisible room. This is now a four-way divisible space. We've effectively added just one more 310 system and another set of switches. We also provide guidance here in regards to how to set things up, how to do the switching. But again, jumping back, you'll notice the placement that I've set up here is again very specifically in mind with maintaining proper coverage. The A room I'm on the north wall, the B room I'm on the east wall, the D room I'm on the south wall, the C room I'm on the west wall. But you'll notice as I switch or combine any of these two rooms together, I'll get great coverage. And then overall, when I've got this room combined as one big space, I'll take the B and the C speakers as my main setup. So again, it really depends on how you want to do this, how your setup is, what your customer is looking for. But note that using this variety of switches, this type of setup, you'll be able to do a whole different setup for multiple rooms. Blah, blah, blah. Pardon me. So let's jump ahead now into switching hardware. How do we actually make this happen? I mentioned this before that there are some very specific things that we need to keep in mind. And these are the minimum specifications. Now, at its basic mode, you can get this simple AB switch. This allows you to switch both devices in and out of that single Connect module or to the other Connect module as needed. But the main thing you need to understand is it has to have a minimum of 100 megabits per second data rate, ability to pass PoE, and the main thing, it's not listed here, it should be, is no packet manipulation. We want these data packets to effectively transit through this switch as quickly as possible. No manipulation, no changes. We don't want any latency. So that's why this can't really be a standard network switch, is because they tend to do some layer of packet manipulation. So this switch again is basic. It involves you walking up and switching it manually from A to B mode. But we all know that we've got customers that like a fair level of automation and ease in their space. Therefore, the automated switch. Now, to enable automation, you can use different controllable layer 1 Ethernet switches. These can be controlled through relays, serial ports, IP interfaces, a variety of different ways. In addition to this, though, control of the switches needs to be added, and a suitable AV control system that we found is the Extron IPCP Pro 250XI as pictured here. However, this is not the only method. There's a variety of different ways, as I'm sure you're aware. This is really up to you as the integrator, however, to determine with your customer the best way to control this system. Blackbox and Elcom both make suitable switches. We've got information on this. Again, that website, support.nureva.com. All the information that I'm talking about today, for the most part, is covered on that website. But again, if you have any questions, you can reach out to us at support@nureva.com for more help. Now, this is an interesting one, and I want to cover a little bit of this because I do get questions from time to time about using cameras in a divisible space. So, a lot of this involves pre-planning and thinking about deployment in both spaces as far as the design goes. So, at its heart, let's look at this as a very basic two-way divisible room. I've got two tables set up as seen. I've got two cameras, fixed USB cameras, no tracking, no changing. They just sit there, fixed location. Works very well. We can open up the room. Our tables stay as they are. Our cameras stay as they are. This room combined now with no change to the camera views because the layout does not, pardon me, the layout does not change. However, the customer, of course, likes to challenge us and they say, well, Matt, I want to go and change my table layout to do this. Now, fantastic. The Nureva system laughs at this. Says, ha ha ha, we'll automatically recalibrate our system to take any room changes into account. But the cameras are still sitting here like this, and this is not going to be sufficient. So this is the first takeaway here, is when you have a divisible space, is your layout going to change? Do your camera views need to change? You need to consider that. Sometimes a divisible space will change the focus of the room from one wall to an entirely different wall. And again, those camera views need to change. So the first thing that I'm going to do in this divisible space after I've moved these tables is I'm going to move the cameras to a slightly different location, give a bit of a different view. And now I'm more or less capturing the entire space with these two fixed USB cameras. Well, again, maybe not sufficient because we've got a presenter at the front of the room walking around. So whoops, we'll add in a third camera view. This is going to capture that presenter. Now, again, these are all just going to be basic fixed USB cameras, and there's a couple of things to understand with this layout. I've taken and I've switched my divisible spaces, and that means I've also switched my cameras. So to give an idea on what this looks like, I'm going to show you a fairly complex drawing and what this can look like if we get into the automated side of things. Now, on the left and the right-hand sides, we've got our most basic setup here. I've got my room PC, I've got a Connect module, and I've got an HDL 310, and then I've got a whole bunch of other stuff happening here. So in normal circumstance, this PC is talking to this Connect module, which is talking to the speaker bar. Same thing on the other space. But when I combine the rooms, well, I'm going to have one Connect module connected to both the HDL 310 systems. However, because I've added in cameras now and camera switching, because again, remember that very first example I was showing you was just basic cameras attached via USB, this is going to add in that additional layer of complexity. So what I've done is I've given USB switches to all three cameras, as well as one to this ABPC. When I switch from the A side to the B side, I'm bringing in cameras to this now when we talk about the InnoGenie Cam 230. The InnoGenie Cam 230 provides switching and switching information. The tracking data is provided through the sound location data on our system. Now, to get to the point here, what eventually happens is when I switch these systems together, the InnoGenie and these three cameras are now attached to this Connect module, which talks to this PC. And ultimately, what happens here is this becomes a combined system with three cameras that will do tracking. Now, I understand this might be difficult and a little hard to follow, so certainly reach out to me, support@nureva.com, if you have more questions about this. But specifically, this is, at its heart, it's a very basic camera switching and tracking system. Now, in this type of space, I'm going to use very, very similar. I'm going to introduce two fixed USB cameras at the top because we've got these small meeting rooms, and then I'm going to add in an HDMI camera with tracking, as I've shown in that previous example, that line diagram. And this is going to enable this space for full tracking and absolute fantastic experience for the customers. Now, I've got a couple of tips here. As I mentioned at the beginning, positioning is key. Try to set up cameras to capture multiple setups without needing to move cameras to a new location. If multiple views are required, look for something that is IP-based, like a Q-SYS or Crestron solution, as Ethernet cable is inexpensive versus extending USB or HDMI. And that's what I really get into talking about there, is that planning, understanding what does it look like when you've opened up the room, closed the room, do cameras need to move, do I need to do different cabling? And if cameras need to be physically relocated, having multiple fixed mounts can accommodate a quicker, more repeatable setup. And that's the thing, you want to be able to do this repeatably and reliably. So to wrap things up here, I want to touch on extra large spaces. On occasion, I'll have a customer call me up and say, "Hey, Matt, we've got this space that occasionally we like to open up to a large collaboration area, but we only need to use about this much of the space." It's not uncommon to receive requests where the customer wishes to only capture a certain size of space. Um, this is an interesting question because the way audio works, the way physics works, in reality, the physics of sound make it such that they're going to capture sounds outside of the intended area. The sound output is also one that cannot be controlled short of having a physical wall to block the sound transmission. Now, there are systems out there that claim the ability to ignore sounds outside of a predetermined capture zone, and these systems provide this feature, but they're also going to be constrained in other ways, and generally they may not work as well as intended. You also need to have a tech capable of returning to the space, retuning the system based on changes. So as you're doing that opening and closing of that area, it's going to affect the overall space. Now, what I advise in something like this is to take a look at what you have for a setup. Are you looking specifically to do audience capture? It's really about understanding your use case and how you're stepping outside of what we would normally recommend. The audio output is going to be different than in a closed environment. The microphone pickup is going to be different than in a closed environment. You may need to introduce a presenter microphone just to add for additional capture. This type of space, though, I would definitely look to reach out to our support team. Not only can we help you with things like tuning your external microphone using adaptive voice amplification, but you need to understand that ultimately there are going to be some expectations that may need to change when you're setting up, especially in a room, something like this. Now, one other thing I want to touch on here as we're wrapping up is the Nureva app. If you're not familiar, this is a fantastic app that we've got. Not only provides control of your Nureva devices, but also has a couple handy features. This is required for setting up camera switching, so if you're getting into camera switching, please take this app and download it. You'll use it to update your devices and manage settings and features. However, the one thing that I do want to touch on here is the acoustic check capabilities with iOS. If you're looking at stepping into a larger space, if you're looking at dividing and combining two spaces, acoustics will change. Understanding how your acoustics have changed in that environment when you combine those two rooms into that large space is quite possible. Using, again, our acoustic check app on iOS allows you to measure the reverberation decay time in a room and determine what level of acoustic reinforcement you may need, if any, Noting again, the Nureva system does work quite well in a variety of different environments. There's also some troubleshooting capabilities in that app as well. Um, if needed, you might run into some problems, but usually not. Now, to touch a couple of points here as we are closing out again, the Nureva support site, as I've mentioned, contains useful guides and specific device reference information for a successful integration. In there, you'll find things like this divisible room design guide, as well as a variety of different camera integrations. And again, if you're looking to do something beyond what we have on that website, please contact us at support@nureva.com. Now, to summarize, I've got these last few points. The design must be considering placement when rooms are divided and combined. As I stepped through those several different examples, I was able to show how I've taken great care in placing those bars to ensure that as those rooms open and close, I'm getting full coverage throughout. This next point here is an interesting one. The ease of use and switching the spaces has an inverse relationship with cost and design complexity. As we start adding more complexity in switching, we go from that basic A/B switch to something that's more automated. There's going to be an increase in cost. As we add in additional controlling, there's going to be increased cost. It's really just a matter of determining what the use case is and working with the customer and with staying within their budget to allow for this. And again, it's just very, very difficult if you don't think this through. You're going to run into some problems. Now, camera selection and placement must consider both divided and combined space use cases because ultimately, when that room opens and closes, you may change views, you may change where people are sitting. Can you capture everything within that space? So, in summary, like I say, there's a lot of things to think about when we're doing divisible spaces. And once again, I'd refer you back to support.nureva.com for that divisible room guide, or reach out to us at support@nureva.com with your questions. I'd like to thank everyone for joining today.